Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another brief lessons from the juz. Today we'll be doing juz number 25. So juz number 25, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Juz 25 begins with Surah Fusilat, chapter number 41, from verse number 47. Then to Surah Shura, chapter number 42. Then to Surah Zukhruf, chapter number 43. Then on to Surah Dukhan, chapter number 44. Then on to Surah Jathiyah, chapter number 45, and it ends at the end of Surah Jathiyah. So 5 surahs we'll be touching on today, inshallah. So let's begin. So Surah Fusilat, we touched on Surah Fusilat yesterday, and we probably jump across the ending of Surah Fusilat. Some of the brief lessons we can pull out from it, that Allah says to the end of Surah Fusilat, that what we sow in this life, what we sow in the dunya is what we will reap in the dunya. And what we sow for the akhirah, what we sow for the next life, we will reap in the next life. And when we sow, we mean just as a farmer or someone who's planted would sow a seed, and they would plant a seed and they would reap what comes out from it. They will reap the fruits of it and the plants from it. Likewise, if we put forth sacrifices in this world, then the benefit from those sacrifices and the efforts that we put in, we will get it in this world alone, and it won't be for the next. And if we want a reward, if we want a benefit to come in the next life, then we need to put forth sacrifices. We need to put forth efforts towards the next life. So when we ask Allah for goodness, we ask Allah for goodness in this life as well as the next life. When we do deeds that will benefit us in this life, as well as we need to do deeds that will benefit us in the next life. For the next life is eternal, and this life is not eternal. This life is mortal, that we will come to an end soon. We will come to an end definitely, but the next life, it is eternal. It is, and eternally we will be in heaven or hell. We will be in a state of happiness, or we could be in a state of sadness and grief. And even for the believers, Allah says that He would take them out of the hellfire and put them into the Jannah eventually. So when we make the dua, that's a good example of how we should make dua and how we should make efforts when we supplicate, and even efforts in general. As Allah says in Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse 201, the very common dua that we know, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. When we look at this dua, Allah is a way teaching us how to make dua here. That we ask Allah, give us the good in this life, and then give us the good in the next life. So we asking for both here, in this life and the next life. And also after that, save us from the punishment of the fire of hell. So we actually asking for more. We could say that 2/3 of this dua alone deals with the next life, and 1/3 deals with this life. And maybe the ratio in which we should make dua, the ratio of our efforts could be something like that. That at least, for the least, it should be balanced. That our efforts should be this life as well as the next life balanced. Or even if we were to put more towards the next life, because that is the eternal one, then of course it will only benefit us in the long run. Allah goes on to say in a couple verses after that He is able to give every single person every single thing that they want. And of course, to Allah belongs the treasures of the unseen. To Allah belongs He's the most powerful, and He can grant any single thing to every single one that they want. And we know the hadith that if Allah was to grant every single person everything that they want, and even double times over, that it would not decrease from the treasures of Allah as much as it wouldn't even decrease as much as if we were to take a pin and drop it into the ocean and then remove that pin, and the amount of water that remains on that pin compared to the ocean, it would not even decrease the treasures of Allah by that much if every single person was to get what they want. So Allah says that He can grant every single one exactly what they wanted, all of the riches that they wanted, every single thing that they wanted. But then Allah says that but they will be transgressing, they will transgress. And we would think sometimes that I wish I could have everything that I wanted. I would be so happy if I have everything that I wanted. I wouldn't have any worries. I'll be comfortable, and probably I'll worship Allah more, and it wouldn't be going through all this stress. But if we ask ourselves really and truly, if we were to get even one thing that we really, really wanted, and you would know what that one thing is, is it something that is really bring us closer to Allah? Would it be something that would bring us closer to Allah? Would it be something that would actually make us a better person, or is just based on our natural desires and something of this world that we would like, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. But it shows that if every single one was to get everything that they wanted, that they may transgress, in the sense that they would be so, everything was really of this dunya, that what people like. Everything will be of this world, and then we might end up being caught up as much in this world, and then we'll end up at the end result maybe forgetting or leaving off as much of our efforts for the next world, maybe because we are so happy already here that we tend to forget it the next life. So sometimes when we go through a little difficulty and hardships, it causes us to remember that the true rest and the true peace is really in Jannah, and we will work for it. So sometimes the hardships and difficulties, it's actually there to serve a purpose. Allah Ta'ala A'lam. We should probably jump across to Surah Shura, chapter number 42 right now. Surah Shura has a very famous and bold, profound statement, a statement of Tawheed, where Allah says, Laisa kamithlihi shay, that there is absolutely nothing like unto Him. So it means that anything that we can think about, anything that is as most magnificent thing that we can think about, even if we were to quote unquote picture Allah, if we were to think about Allah, the most magnificent, amazing, beautiful, extraordinary thing that we can think about, that still is not even close to Allah. Imagine that. So, Laisa kamithlihi shay, that there is nothing like unto Him. So, and on the other hand, that everything that we not compare to Allah, but everything that we may give some sort of reverence to, or we may think in a high manner, that Allah is nothing like unto any of these things either, that His majesty and His power and His divinity far supersedes that, and we know that whenever we compare, if we cannot compare anything like unto Allah. So jumping ahead, we can probably go on to Surah Zukhruf now. Surah Zukhruf, chapter number 43. Allah says a very nice, interesting verse here, where Allah says that He has created, or He has separated and proportioned people at different levels, and different strata. Sometimes you can think about it, meaning that in a society, in a community, in the world, there are people who are different levels, that they do different things, and everyone has a specific duty and a responsibility. And some, and as the verse says, that some and people, this causes some to depend upon others. So what does this mean? It means that in the world there are so many different functions and responsibilities of persons. From those who manage activities, from those who do the accounting of activities, from those who do the physical work in different fields, from those who do what we may consider something simple and on the lower end. The example is that of a janitorial service, we would think that is something simple, but even something as simple as we may think that is, that if a janitor in a company or generally, if those who go around with the garbage truck and they do not pick up our garbage at the end of the day, you know what will happen? That we'll have a whole bunch of garbage just stinking there, right, with flies and worms and all of that, and we ourselves might not even want to do it. So as much as we look down sometimes at those people, just imagine how important they really are, and it shows us that in the sight of Allah, that no one is insignificant, that even though we may consider someone insignificant or on the lower end, Allah doesn't consider them like that, and it is a good practice that we ourselves, that we don't look down at people, no matter what strata in society that they are, because they actually provide a very vital role and a very vital function. And that goes the same for us, that every single one of us, inshallah, that we play some role in society, that we play some function in society that is meaningful. And just like how we depend on other people, that inshallah people depend on us also for something, some role, some function. So we all independent upon each other, and Allah has created, Allah says that He has created the world and the dunya and the communities like that. So everyone has to depend on someone at the end of the day, and it shows a sense of humility, in other words. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. going on towards the end of Surah Zukhruf, Allah speaks about the on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that those who were friends in this earth, on this dunya, those who were friends, were best buddies sometimes, that on the day of judgment they may be enemies to each other. So we might have two individuals, two guys, two girls, that they may be friends, they may be as we say BFFs, very good friends, the best friend in this world, and you know, we do everything together and very close. But on the day of judgment, that these same two individuals, that they would be enemies to each other. And why is that? It's so much so that because on that day, that every soul will be looking towards itself. You know, despite how much they care and closeness they had to someone in this earth, because of the fears and the reality of that day, that the reality being heaven or hell, the reality will be brought forth in front of us, that the hellfire will be brought forth in front of us, that, you know, we can't get more real than that. And the seriousness will definitely strike us on that day, that because it gets so real that we even turn against the people that we love in this world, that we create close for in this world. And I know, as the Sheikh mentioned, that we might even say that these people, well, we try to blame them for the wrongs that we did, that probably these people encouraged us in this, because these people were doing it, I went ahead and do it also, because they didn't admonish me and they didn't correct me and they saw me doing something wrong and they could have stopped me. And we try to blame all the people who were closest to us. We might even try to blame them on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So it says a lot that and we know, when we think about the people who are closest to us now, and we would never want to do that in this world, but it shows the difference that will happen on Yawm al-Qiyamah about it, and that is when the reality surely hits us, that we would turn in any direction to get to get a bail out, in other words. Probably jump across to Surah Dukhan, chapter number 44. Surah Dukhan has the verse, probably I wanted to leave it for last, but the verse there was at the beginning of Surah Dukhan, where Allah speaks about Laylatun Mubarakan. And what is Laylatul Mubarakan? It refers to Laylatul Qadr. So the Surah Dukhan is the second place in the Quran, well, the first place if we read it from chronologically, that it is from the beginning of the Quran, that is. It is so the Laylatul Qadr is only mentioned in two places in the Quran, in Surah Qadr, chapter number 97, and also in Surah Dukhan here, where verses 3 and 4, where Allah says in Surah Dukhan that He calls Laylatul Qadr Laylatul Mubarakan. He calls it a blessed night, a night that is full of barakah, and we know that because it is better, khayrun min alfi shahr, that it is better than 1,000 months, and whatever we do in it is multiplied so many times, as much as 30,000 nights, even more than it. So that is the barakah in it, and it shows that even barakah that we cannot even comprehend, that we say is better than 1,000 months, which is 83 years and 4 months, or which is 30,000 nights, we say it's better than it. But how much better? It could be 100 times better, 1,000 times better, that we don't even know. So Allah calls it Laylatul Mubarakan, a very blessed night. And Allah says in verse number 4 that every single decree, and you know, the Arabic means not just every single decree, but every single precise decree, you know, down to the nitty-gritty sometimes, we could call it, is decreed, is written on this night. So the very minute details of things of the commands that will be given to the angels are also written on the night of Laylatul Qadr. So it shows that, you know, if we want those commands, and we want things even down to the nitty-gritty for the next year, we want those things to be, you know, in our favor, we want it to be a certain way, that it is definitely a time that we should supplicate. It is definitely a time that we call upon Allah and ask for everything that we would like for the next year, or how we would want it to be, for the blessings of it, for protection and everything generally for the next year, that this is the time. And you know, definitely within these last 10 nights, that definitely one of these nights definitely would be Laylatul Qadr. You know, we would experience it whether we know it or not. And tonight is the 25th night. Tonight is an odd night, so there's a very high chance again of being Laylatul Qadr. So do exert as much as we can. Moving on, towards the end of Surah Dukhan, Allah says that you know, to those who disbelieve, to those who disbelieve in our signs and disbelieve of a day of a judgment, and disbelieve in the akhirah and heaven and hell, that just wait, basically. Just wait for the day of judgment. Just wait for the time to come, and you would see the reality of it. You know, and Allah says this in this term, that if you disbelieve, well, you know, khalas, just time will tell, in other words. And you know, some of the shuyukh, when explaining this verse, mention, you know, sometimes this is how Allah speaks to these people. But sometimes we may have like family members who we wholly believe, we are Muslims, and we wholly believe that there is a day of judgment, that there will be heaven and hell, and we hold all of these beliefs. But if there is a family member who does not hold this belief, or even a friend or close person to us who doesn't hold these beliefs, but sometimes we get so worked up because of it. Sometimes we get so angered by them and so annoyed with them, and we start quarreling with them, and sometimes we even use abusive language to them. But Allah doesn't address them in this manner in the Quran. You know, yes, it is something to be displeased about. Yes, it is something to be vexed about. But how we deal with them, though, it is something that we need to deal with them in a just manner. That we can't quarrel with them, and we can't abuse them in any way at all. And especially if these people might be even our parents, our mothers and fathers, that even more so that we can't even show any sort of you know, disobedience to them, or disrespect to them in that sense. So we'll probably close off now with ending of Surah Jathiyah. We probably do just one point from Surah Jathiyah, that there are some people, Allah mentions in the Quran in Surah Jathiyah, that there are some people that they worship their desires. Allah describes it in this manner, that their desires are their ilah. Their desires becomes their God. And what does it mean? This means that for some people, and you know, for all of us, we do have some sort of desire. Jump high, jump low. We do have something that we are attracted to, something that we like, and not everyone has the same desire. You know, for some people it may be movies. For some people it might be going out, and within desires there are things. There are the desires that are halal, and there are desires that are haram. There are desires that are allowed, and there's okay if we do it and we indulge in it. But then there are desires that are haram, that we should abstain from them, and if we were to indulge in them, we actually committed some sort of sin. And Allah says that some people, that they take their desires, and it could even be the desires that are halal, and they take the desires and make the desires their God. And it means that what they desire and what they like and what they want to do and what they feel inclined to, that they do this so much, so extensive, that this becomes their calling, that because of this they forget Allah in a way, that because of these things and their desires and what they're doing, that they even forget to pray at sometimes. They forget that the time of Salah comes in and goes, but because we are caught up in what we are doing, that we don't pray, so we forget Allah in this manner, and so for everything else, that we become overwhelmed by our desires, or overwhelmed by even our one desire that takes over our life sometimes. And because of this, it can put us in a state where we become forgetful of Allah. We start getting into you know, wrongs doings because of this, that it takes over our life. So in other words, we need to know what our desires are and how much are we feeding those desires. If we are indulging in them too much, if we are giving those things too much priorities, and we actually need to give other things priorities, whether it be our families, whether it be our jobs, whether it be our religion, our deen, you know, at the same time where we might not be leaving off the salah and other things like that, but if our desires cause us to leave out other commands of Allah, example, taking care of the family, example, you know, fulfilling our rights upon others, then our desires become something that is haram, in other words. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And we'll end there tonight. Do read Quran as being as a odd night. So do read Quran, do perform some salah, do some adhkar, some dhikr, and most importantly do some supplication, some dua. For indeed this may be Laylatul Qadr, Allahu a'lam. And the aim is to spend as much nights in devotion and in worship. So inshallah we would have caught Laylatul Qadr by the end of the month. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And we end there. Wal akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.